Top Med Talk.
Hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is Top Med Talk. We are coming to you live from the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists 2019 Annual Congress in Chicago, Illinois. AANA 2019 is a gathering of over 3,000 certified registered nurse anesthetists, or CRNAs, for the largest networking and educational event in nurse anesthesia. This year, the AANA has partnered with Top Med Talk to bring the meeting to our listeners. Over the course of 3 days, we're going to be sitting down with presenters, AANA leadership, and delegates to discuss hot topics in the CRNA committee and anesthesia practice. Now, I'm joined by my co-host, partner, and editor-in-chief of Top Med Talk, Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty.
Hello. Always good to be here.
It is good. You're always my co-host.
Yeah. Well, sometimes occasionally it's the other way around, isn't it?
You host every once in a while.
we were downstairs testing some new kit, weren't we? We're going to play with. We're going to be using later.
We are going to be using later. Tell us about that, Monty.
Well, it's using this sort of silent opera, silent disco technology, which, when you can put the headsets on and listen from a distance. We're going to be doing some interviews in the trade exhibition later on today, which you can listen to throughout the trade exhibition. And we might sneak a bit of music on as well.
Yeah, a little bit. We do have to have like a real silent disco.
All approved for those people who are listening that deal in the regulation of music being transmitted. It's all being dealt with. It's all signed off.
That's right.
Yes. What's the word I'm looking for here?
I don't know.
You know where I'm coming from.
It's all legal to play it, not copyrighted. No copyright infringement. Is that what it is? Anyway. Yeah. So, if you're around at the AANA 2019 and you've heard this podcast or any other podcast, come and see us in the exhibit hall. That starts today.
Be interviewed.
You can come and be interviewed. That's right. We want to talk to everybody.
There's some cool sounds.
Yeah, that's right. So, moving on, Monty, because we do want to talk to our special guest. Well, our topic for discussion on Top Med Talk today is a novel use of the Erector Spinae block in an austere environment. Sounds interesting, doesn't it?
Sounds very interesting.
It is. So we are so lucky today to sit down with two members of the U.S. military, Robert Fabich, a CRNA with the U.S. Army, and Sharrod Greene, a CRNA with the U.S. Navy. Did I get it right, guys?
Got it right. Yeah, 100%. Nice job.
I said I did not come from a military family or any kind of background, and so I'm always so worried about getting it wrong, but thank you for your guidance earlier.
So we'll put a photograph up with the podcast as always, and we'll have a competition afterwards who's got the best uniform. I think it's I think
that competition's already won.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a done deal. Yeah.
Is that
Navy
like
wins.
Everybody thinks Navy?
Yeah. It's sharp. I mean, look at it. It's a sharp uniform.
Yeah. It is. It looks really great.
You've got bigger stripes and more stripes. There's more gold on you, Sharrod.
There are. Yes.
Robert,
this is true. I can't compete.
I have to say, you look pretty sharp. I like any man in uniform to me looks fantastic.
Look really smart.
Well, first of all, for all of us from Top Med Talk, thank you so much for your service and for protecting our country. We greatly appreciate all the sacrifices that you and your families have made. That is very important to us to say that first. So jumping right in, you guys have... Tell us a little bit about your relationship and how you all know each other, because you seem like you're pretty tight friends. And I know that you had a recent publication that is entitled "A Novel Use of the Erector Spinae block in an Austere Environment." So just tell us a little bit about your background and your history together.
So I was deployed to Syria, and I was towards the end of the deployment, I believe. I had about 2-3 months left, and Sharrod came down. I asked for help because we were taking care of a lot of patients, and he had volunteered to come down, so he came down. And when you're in a group of 11, 12 people, kind of in a small environment, a lot of stuff going on all the time, and I think you get pretty close. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, most definitely. So I was in Kiara West, Iraq, and they call it Q West for short, with my Navy team, and we had about 25 people there, and we got word that they needed some help down in Syria, and so I volunteered, and they said, "You're off to Syria." We went down there, met Rob, and now we're one of greatest friends.
That's awesome. So how long have you been in the military?
I'm going on just over 12 years now.
12 years.
I've been in almost 16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how long were you deployed at the time?
Well, I was deployed for about 10 months total this last deployment, and I think you probably had about the same.
About 9 months, yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you were all part of, am I getting this right? The U.S. Army Forward Surgical Team.
That's correct.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because that was something that you had...
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a dated concept, the Army's switching doctrine just a little bit. But so a Forward Surgical Team is a group of usually about 20 soldiers made up of surgeons, anesthesia providers, nurse anesthetists, medics, nurses, and they put you out in an austere environment somewhere, and you kind of set up shop and do damage control surgery as patients come in. Unfortunately, with the current conflicts going on, they need to take those 20 people and they split us. So in this case, we got split. So there's like 10 of us, 11 of us at one site. So doing all the stuff that a 20-man team is supposed to do with 11 people or 10 people, and that's kind of the current concept, if you will.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take it back just a little bit for our listeners and for myself. So when you talk about an austere environment, what does that really mean?
What it means is you don't have the luxuries of working in a hospital. So, you don't have clean operating rooms. You don't necessarily have a good supply chain, so you don't get all your supplies. In our case, we're lucky if we had power. We're lucky if we had water. We're lucky if we had food that day. Pretty much the worst horrible conditions in this case, a war-torn country. That's the definition of austere.
And Rob, do you try and set up in one place? Do you sort of take over something that hasn't been knocked over yet, or do you put tents up? Or
we do all those things.
Yep.
The way the doctrines are written now, we can set up in an abandoned building, which is what we did in our case here. We can set up in tents. Some of the teams set up in the back of a vehicle, and that's where they work out of. So it really just depends on the current conflict or environment that you're in.
And that would be your field hospital?
No, it would just be a
field unit.
Yeah, like a
triage.
Yeah, just kind of like a small place. So the combat support hospitals are well-established, defined places where we send it's called a Roll 3, where we send like our injured people to get like more definitive care. We're only there to stop the bleeding, patch the holes, and get them to the next site.
And that's actually a great point, because the Navy actually doesn't have doctrine on forward surgical teams. We actually have, what we were out there doing was it was called a NEMU, or a Navy Expeditionary Medical Unit. So when we get there, it's already a brick and mortar facility or a large tent that's been set up that has all those luxury items in it. So it was great actually getting that experience with them and being able to see what an austere environment was like.
I'm going to get myself in trouble now. What are you guys doing on land?
We hear that quite a bit. We actually
ask
that question
same
a lot.
thing all the time. We're like, why is the Navy here?
You're very welcome, I'm sure.
Yeah, no one was turning you away at that point, I don't think.
But I thought the big differentiator was like land ships type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, that you have like mobile units on your built into your ship.
We do. We actually have a huge hospital ship. It's called the Comfort, and we send teams out on that from time to time to do humanitarian missions and things of that nature. And then there's usually one CRNA that goes out on each aircraft carrier whenever they get deployed as well. But there's not as many aircraft carriers, obviously, as there are CRNAs. So we have plenty of CRNAs that are at MTFs or military treatment facilities.
Oh, gotcha.
So I think it might not be as well published out there, but what's kind of going on with military medicine now is we're turning into like purple suitors, I think is the coin word they were using at some point, where we all kind of work together. So Army, Air Force, Navy, instead of us having Army facility, Navy facility, Air Force facility, now it's joint. So Army, Air Force, Navy, kind of combined our services, get rid of duplicated services, and give a better product to our end users and the soldiers and stuff like that. So
where you set up, you said in Syria, Rob, you'd set this thing up and you'd receive people, and your job was to relieve the pain, stop the bleeding, and ship them out ASAP. Keep them alive and ship them out. We didn't have holding capability, so that was always a big frustration of mine. I was like, okay, when can we get this person out of here? They've been here too long. Let's go. Out the door.
That's right.
So we were constantly, we get them in, and then we try to ship them out. In this case, most of our patients were partner forces, so we were sending them to their local facilities. So there's sometimes a delay waiting for like their medical care to be able to come in and take these patients and bring on. So we're always like, let's go.
And was that a road transfer then, or a heli transfer, or did it vary?
It varied on the patient. So coalition patients and U.S. soldiers and stuff like that usually went by air. because our hospitals were further away and in safer locations. The local nationals and stuff all went by ground. So,
and you may hear this term again, but damage control surgery. That is what we did. We stopped the bleeding. Anything that was going to cause the patient to die almost immediately. We make sure we mediate or mitigate whatever that was, and then we send them to the big MTF.
Gotcha. So I'm sure there's some new technologies and techniques that can, be used when you're deployed like that in that type of situation. Let me take it back just a step. So in your training and what you typically do if you're in a setting that is, not an austere environment, I mean, you have everything at your disposal and you can do regional anesthesia in this case, or you can do anything you want because you have anything you need. But what does that look like when you're actually trying to take care of somebody in the field?
Well, it's so back in the stateside, we're fully independent practitioners. We do everything. All the anesthesia techniques, so on and so forth. Then you go out into the field and you try to bring that same level of care with less equipment, right? And so you're like, okay, I might not have an ultrasound device in this case, so how else could you do the same procedure safely and get the same effect, maybe without using a piece of equipment that you need or something like that? Yeah, did that kind of answer where you're going?
Yeah, well, how much of what we do can actually be transferred into, without modern technology?
I'd say a great deal of things that we do stateside can be transferred over there. It's just you don't have all the luxuries that you would have there. So instead of using an ultrasound, you might have to use landmark techniques, things of that nature that you know how to do. You just don't typically do it because you don't have to because you have those items,
Yeah, for sure. And people like me who grew up or went to school where there was everything, a SAT monitor, ultrasound, everything like that. You don't have to take it back. But there are textbooks out there that have, landmarks whenever you're doing a block and
that's how I grew up.
I know. I was waiting for you to say it, Monty.
What's this strange ultrasound thing you speak of?
Well, I will say about the great thing about technology, right, is it's getting better every day. And just with ultrasound, I mean, when I first came in just as a nurse, and remember seeing these ultrasound devices in the FST. They're big, they're bulky. You could barely see a picture on them. Yeah. I mean, down there, I was like, from a company, I rented an ultrasound device, and I brought it with me, and I was like, oh, look at this. We can see everything on my cell phone as we do this.
On your iPhone and a device that you palm held hand. Yeah.
So you had it actually on an iPad.
Yeah, I had it on the iPad. Yeah. So I would set up, I had a little music stand, kind of like the one you guys have over here in the corner, tripod. Mm-hmm. And I would set it up, and we sit, Sharrod and I'd be like, okay, let's go. We have it right here. Let's figure out what we're doing. So.
Cool. Well, let's dive into a little bit. So you had a publication recently, and what journal was that in?
Military Medicine.
Military Medicine. And tell us a little bit about, it was a case study, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Yeah, so walk us through it.
So basically we had a male somewhere in his 20s that came in, had a penetrating wound to his chest. And we took care of him. I believe we put a chest tube in that
chest
guy,
tube.
Right? Yeah,
yep.
We put a chest tube in him, and then we had to send him out on his way. The problem is that when we're sending him from our facility to the host nation medical facility, the medical care in that 4 or 5 hour time frame is almost non-existent, right? Oh. So you don't want to give somebody narcotics or something that's going to cause them to stop breathing, but you want to take care of this person's pain. So we're like, well, let's try to do something new, see if we can get rid of their pain without giving them a bunch of narcotics, and that's kind of where we were like, this is a good case for Erector Spinae.
Yeah.
Now, typically in those situations, or a lot in MTFs or at hospitals that are stateside, you can do epidurals or things of that nature to take care of pain that's thorax or upper body. And with this particular patient, we didn't want epidurals aren't considered the a thing that you use out there because number one, you want to keep things completely aseptic. You want to keep them sterile, and they obviously didn't know how to manage it. So Erector Spinae block, you do a 1-shot injection medication there, and you can let them go and they're fine.
So we'll have people listening from multiple different backgrounds. So just a quick sketch of what that block. So you're sticking a needle in a part of the body to make pain go away by putting local anaesthetic near the nerves.
Correct.
Where are you putting it? Where are the erector spinae muscles?
So basically, I was going to show you in Sharrod, but I guess I got to describe it.
Walk us through it.
Yeah. So basically, you're going up the transverse process on the back. So kind
of
the
spine.
Spine. Yeah, right. So kind of more of a medial lateral right here. I'm not very good at. I'm showing
Using
you,
your
but I'm not coming up with the right words.
So the muscles running up and down the middle of your spine in the sort of middle section of your body.
And then for us, you're just taking the ultrasound device, you're finding the transverse process, and you're literally just taking your needle and going right in and hitting that transverse process, coming back a little bit, and injecting your local anesthetic, which is a lot safer than some of the other blocks where you're getting closer to the pleural space and things like that.
So you have the rhomboid muscle, then you have the Erector Spinae muscle, and then just underneath that you have the transverse process. You guide the needle right to where the Erector Spinae muscle meets the transverse process. You inject local anesthetic, and you'll see them actually kind of hydrodissect. So they'll pull apart from each other, and that's how you know you're in the right space.
Could you have done it as reliably without ultrasound, do you think?
I mean,
you probably could.
You could. I don't know if I'd want to.
Right,
so.
yeah. It's not as safe as a technique.
I'm trying to tease out how helpful going forward having more ultrasound, because it is getting more user-friendly.
I mean...
It's got a lot to offer, you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all these blocks, not just Erector Spinae, but any type of like regional block that, the degree of safety you bring by bringing ultrasound where you can actually, see the structures that you're aiming for is paramount compared to a technique where you're just blindly inserting, maybe eliciting a response with electricity, but you can't guarantee that needle's where you think it is, or you can't guarantee that medication that you're injecting is going where you think it's going.
And you gave a single shot of what?
Ropivacaine, 0.5% ropivacaine, yeah.
And if you had access to longer-acting local anaesthetic agents, the ones that are liposomally encapsulated and things, would that have been useful, do you think, under those circumstances?
Yeah, I think it can be useful. I think that's really cutting edge right there.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot of literature on that yet, so we probably wouldn't do that.
Strike that from the record.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with the liposomal stuff, right, that requires a refrigeration, so that would be a difficult process for us to have downrange. I mean,
stable drugs.
Yeah, we're already like, okay, our refrigerator is going to work to keep our blood cool, so we try to not use stuff that we'd have to deal with that.
You say the big plus side is now you've taken the pain away, so it's worked well.
That's
which means now you're avoiding the narcotics, which could result in respiratory depression during the next transfer phase, which is unmonitored.
100%.
Fantastic. Well done, guys.
Or the patient screaming the entire way, and these guys wanted to give medicine. And
I can see. So what do you think? I mean, are you hoping to do any other studies or anything like that when it comes to this type of utilization of these types of techniques?
Well, right now we're kind of in the process of this stuff in the future. We have a couple of papers in the works here of different kind of lessons learned, little things that we picked up along the way while we were down there. Like, hey, maybe other people could try these things and give it a shot.
Not on Erector Spinae blocks, but it's not really a new thing. They do it stateside quite often. Actually, rib fractures and things.
Yeah, I
of
was
that
to say
nature.
for rib fractures.
Right. But what it did teach me was actually how to do them, because I hadn't done them in training. I did them my first time with Rob, and so how to do them. And if I get deployed again, I have no issues with doing them. You know what I mean? So I've got that experience now.
Yeah. So do you think that the military, I mean, when you guys do training for going out into the austere environment, are they going to start utilizing some of these techniques, or is that part of your training, you think, going forward?
Yeah, I definitely. So I'm sorry I can't speak for the Navy on this one, but I can speak for the Army. I literally got back and they're like, okay, what did you learn? Start telling us. And I know for the Army CRNAs, I think it's yearly, they kind of take all those lessons from everyone that was deployed, and we try to have a conference where we take those lessons and we bring them forward so we can get the new stuff out there.
And same thing for us. The other caveat I'll add to that is that Rob's at a small facility. I'm at a larger facility, so it's a training facility. So I have students with me all the time. And now that I feel comfortable doing those blocks, I'll do those blocks with my students if I have patients that require them.
So we promised at the beginning we'd throw in a disclaimer.
Yeah.
No, the disclaimer is that these views are not necessarily those of the U.S. Army or U.S. Navy.
That's correct, yeah.
Keeping us on there, Monty.
I appreciate that. We won't get a phone call later on today.
No, it's all good. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting down with us on Top Med Talk.
It's been fun.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Hopefully, I don't know how it works, but hopefully you won't have to be deployed again. But if you do, good luck. And, I think that just writing up the case study and publishing, I think, is fantastic. Anything that you can do to help promote better practice, whether it's in practice, everyday practice, or in the austere environment, I think is really great. So keep that coming, and I applaud you for those efforts.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, and hopefully we can talk to you soon again on Top Med Talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to join in on Top Med Talk during the AA 2019. We'll be coming to you the next couple days. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all your favorite social media platforms, and subscribe to Top Med Talk on topmedtalk.com. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Top Med Talk.
Nate Majerison here. Thanks for listening to Top Med Talk. Now, before we let you go, it's important that we remind you to subscribe to Top Med Talk. That way you'll never, ever miss another episode. Also, if we could encourage you to join us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, pretty much every single social media platform, we're there. Join us. And finally, check out topmedtalk.com. If you go to our website, you can subscribe to email updates. That way we can always tell you where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and how you can join us. topmedtalk.com, and click on the section marked email updates. Finally, Top Med Talk is proud to act as the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about them as well. ebpom.org is their website. That's ebpom.org. And if you go to ebpom.org/meetings, you can find out about some of the wonderful meetings that we attend and cover across the year here on Top Med Talk. That's ebpom.org/meetings.